Squirrels! Today's guest on Blind Squirrel Talk, famous in a small town, is Susan McLeish. Residing in the historic district of Maysville, Georgia, Susan's life story is as unique and beautiful as her front door. Her giving spirit is only surpassed by her vision of making Maysville the best little small town to call home. We can't wait for you to get to know Susan McLeish.
And don't forget to find us on Facebook and Instagram at Blind Squirrel Talk and on X at Blind Squirrel PC. If you enjoy the show, please remember to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you write us a review there or leave us a comment on Spotify or YouTube, we'll read it out on a future episode of the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Blind Squirrel Talk. And we're doing a series on famous in a small town. I'm Lulu.
I'm Kim.
And this is Susan McLeish. And we're so happy that you've decided to join us today. And we're excited about what you're going to tell our wonderful audience. So, Susan, tell us, how long have you been in Maysville and what brought you here?
I have been in Maysville. My husband and I have been in Maysville for 3 years. We always easily recall it because it was Memorial Day weekend that we moved in. And we did not realize that 2 out of our 3 children and their grown children, well, teenage children, were going to help us move. They surprised us. And so we just kept moving and moving as we had all these hands and stacking up boxes, and it was great to get everything in. We got here via the GPS totally by fluke. We had decided we would be moving away from Cumming. It had gotten very crowded, and there was no reason to stay, and my teaching years were over, and what Bill did was he could do it anywhere. And so we decided to get in the car 1 day a week and drive in a different direction without any preconceived notion about location, anything, just go and see. And so that's what we did. And so on one particular day, we were up probably a little northwest of here, just poking around, had to get back to Jefferson because we had a grandson who had a Little League game, and those are sacred moments. And so we turned on the GPS, and you know how they are. Sometimes they put you on the highways, sometimes they put you on the byways. And so we were put on the byways and going through places we had never seen or heard of, and one of which was Maysville. And these old homes on the main road really spoke to us. I grew up in old houses, so it's just a comfort zone for me, and Bill enjoys them too. So when we got home, we called the real estate agent we were working with, and of course they're connected all over, you know. And we came, and I still say this in all truth, it had me by the front door, because the front door is
You have the best front door in Maysville?
Beautiful wooden door, and I just kind of stood there and gazed at it until I thought, well, it'd probably be good if I would go in. See what it's like on the inside. We had no idea if it was going to be wonderful or just in terrible need, you know, of repair. You just don't know. It was built in 1883, so it could have been anything. Much to our delight, it was just absolutely exquisite in terms of, especially the front part, the way it had been allowed to be old, but in a good way. We're fine that it has new windows. We're not purists from, you know, the architectural point of view of needing windows installed in 1883. And so the fact that they can go up and down, you can lean them in and out to wash them, that's all great. Because no one knows when they look at glass, you know, what it is. And it just more and more got us. Now the kitchen, we'll have some different touches when we're ready for it. It's a big kitchen. Most people would be thrilled with it. But since my husband is a former executive chef, he has wishes and requirements that are different from the average household. So at some point, that will happen. But it also has almost an acre of land that he loves. He loves his Ryder Moore to get out there. I wouldn't know if I tried. I'd probably put it in reverse and end up in South America. But he loves that. So. And one thing I really love about it is I love music, and my parents were both music majors. I grew up thinking that everybody could sing, everybody could play an instrument.
Not.
I know, and it was a big surprise to me when I got older and would be at someone's house and I'd go, well, where's their piano? It's like, they don't have a piano. It's like they don't have a bathroom. You know, everybody has a piano, but they don't. And so to have a piano room where the floors are wood and the walls are wood and the ceiling's wood, I almost have to play pianissimo, you know, the lightest touch on the piano. Otherwise, it's almost too loud, you know. So it really truly got us at first sight. That's the only way to say it.
Aw.
And it worked out, and next thing we knew, we were here.
And we're glad you're here.
We're glad we're here. A wonderful place to be.
So, here, what did you do in your other life?
My other life. I was a teacher, and I think of that as a blessing. Actually, I wasn't a teacher right out of the chute. I was trained to be a teacher right out of college. But then we were married and started a family, and since my husband was in the restaurant business, it was really difficult for me to work full-time, take care of a child, and his nights were pretty much in demand, and you never knew when things were going to happen. You could have the best possible staff, but people would, you know, there were people that would actually risk their job because they wanted to go do something some night, and then, you know, they had to be fired. And that might sound severe, but when you're running a restaurant that serves 1,300 meals every night,
Wow.
from scratch, I mean, they
Wow.
even squeeze their own lemon juice.
Wow.
You depend on everybody.
You have to depend on everybody. Everybody has to be there, and of course, sometimes people are going to be sick or have a tragedy or whatever. But just on a whim, you know, to decide that you want to go to a entertainment concert party, you know, that didn't work. So those hours were very long. So I waited until our youngest one was actually a senior in high school before I started teaching, and taught for 27 years. I was a foreign language teacher. Mainly French was my main thing and my love. And branched out to ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Languages. And occasionally, I had a principal at one point, this was middle school, where this was actually the beginning when I was teaching. She was flexible with what I wanted to teach. There were 6 weeks classes. The purpose was to give students a taste of something, to see what they might like to do later on. So I did, in my 6 weeks, I started with a week of French, and then I knew enough Spanish to switch to a week of Spanish, showing those two Romance languages were very similar, different but similar. And then from there I went to German to have a completely different sound. I majored in French and minored in German in college. Completely different sound with German, their word order, you know, the verb is always the second word in the sentence, just things like that. Then switched to Russian, which has 5 letters in the alphabet that are identical to ours, K-O-M-E-T-A, that's 6 actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a K in English and a K in Russian are the same thing, but once you get past those 6 letters, they can look like one of your letters, but they don't
They are
represent
not.
that letter. Yeah. And then finally I did Cherokee Indian for the last week.
Wow.
Because I grew weary of some students, I should say that, some, not all, not nearly all, but some students being kind of grudging and a little bit gnarly about wanting to learn, you know, Cherokee Indian because they didn't like anything different. They were the same ones that would complain about having to learn Spanish at that point back then. And I wanted to give them the insight that if you want to use the original language from where we're standing right now, then we're going to have to switch to Cherokee because English was not the first language on this soil. And so it gave them something to consider and think about. I wasn't gnarly about it. I just said, well, okay, if we're going to do the language switch, you know, then we have, and they go, oh. So it gave them something to think about. So I had fun with things like that. I obviously, my students learned to conjugate their verbs and learn their vocabulary and all, but if you can't teach the love of a language and a culture, then you're just teaching sounds, and nobody's interested in sounds. So it was just a wonderful 27 years of blending that, and I really enjoyed middle school kids. I know a lot of folks say middle school, but they're wonderful. They have positive energy, and you just have to learn how to channel that into the right place. And they were willing to try new things. I did switch to high school for 3 years, and they were wonderful kids, but I felt like once somebody got their driver's license or their best friend got their driver's license, then school shifted, to the left. And combine that with the idea that if you had a certain grade point average, you can get a certain award or scholarship, and so they became grade shoppers instead of learners. Grade shopping works fine if you're studying something like history, where you're just doing 1 unit on whatever happened, But when you're learning something like math or foreign language, and it's all continuous and it builds and builds, you can't just throw away 2 weeks because of the learning, because you're more interested in something. And so middle school kids were still on it, and we did a lot of art projects, had great art teachers to collaborate with. I was just thinking about one recently because we were so near to Memorial Day, but most of the students had no idea that there were American military cemeteries in many parts of the world. Sad but true. And so, of course, we focused on Normandy, and that had, unfortunately, way too rich a memory. There was too much to learn about that, but I was glad that they left my classroom aware that this happened. And there could very well be somebody in your own family history that participated in it or knew somebody who had participated in it. And these are not movie scripts. These are real life events. So, and it was also a win-win because Memorial Day being the end of the school year, how the end of school year is for most kids, get me out of here. And then, of course, they have all that state testing, and once they're done with that, they're done.
They've checked out mentally. Yeah.
So to have a project that was intriguing and got their attention and felt purposeful to them, their assignment was to find a way to honor the memory of the soldiers who fought, and certainly the ones who died. And it was very interesting to see these middle school kids come up with something. I wasn't asking them to look up something just in a dictionary for an answer or something that was in their book. They had to contemplate and come up with, how would I honor someone who participated in this situation? And it was, it brought tears to my eyes a lot of times, what they were able to come up with once they got it. And it didn't just feel like a chapter in a history book. It felt like they kind of began to know more and to feel more. And so one of the things that touched my heart, because it was music, was you can imagine if 4 middle school boys were allowed to work on a project out in the hall and halfway down the stairs, that's like a recipe for trouble.
Oh yeah.
But they were they all had their instruments. They all played a string instrument, and they were they had worked on an arrangement of America the Beautiful, and they were practicing in the stairwell. And I either had goosebumps or tears, one or the other. The average group of 4 kids in the stairwell, you'd be going, "God, what are you guys doing?" But they were planning their presentation, which was sweet. And some wrote poetry, some did pictures, some wrote letters to the people who oversee the cemetery in Paris, not Paris, but up in Normandy. And so that was super cool. Another really favorite assignment was the very large tree that fell down in a forest one time and was discovered by 4 kids and their dog. And it turned out to be the Lascaux Caves, the very famous prehistoric caves.
Wow.
The huge root had uprooted, and so, they were like middle school kids, they had to go look. And so they just kept looking, going down a little further, and then were amazed, what they had found. And so they went to their school and got their history teacher they liked him and felt safe with him, and they told him what they had found. And of course, his first thought was, "Are you guys
messing with him?"
Yeah. I said, no. And so they made him promise that if they took him to the cave, that he wouldn't tell anybody. So for the moment, he promised. But then when when they saw what they saw and came back, he helped them understand that
you can't keep quiet about this.
Yeah. So there was this, giant prehistoric, cave find, and so after we studied it and kind of pulled out all the lessons from it, they had to do their own cave drawings. So I went to the grocery store and this was the most difficult part of the assignment, finding paper bags. I use these plastic bags. So one of the big grocery stores gave me the paper bags. So the first thing that I had them do, this is like so against the rules. I said, okay, get your phone. Well, especially back then, that was like, huh? You're going to need a cave torch. This is your new cave torch. So that was their cave torch with the light on. And then I'm turning out the lights on purpose. And you're going to get down on the floor and crawl under your desk, and you're going to tape this paper bag underneath your desk. But before you do that, I want you to crush it as well as you possibly can. So all these were like, what is she doing?
Right. What's the end game here?
This is not what we normally do
Right.
here. And so they got it all super crushed, taped. They're all excited. They had their cave lights on, And then I reminded them of the video we had seen the day before about these cave drawings. I said, now I'm going to give you about 3 different colors of chalk, like different shades of brown. And you're going to make your own cave drawing. And so they did that, and again, it broke all the rules traditionally, but
Right.
in the best way, And so when you can kind of touch that perimeter a little bit of what's acceptable and what's not in behavior, then you get more buy-in from middle school kids. But they were doing all the right stuff, and so they were up there and on their back, and they were doing their drawings, and I played some kind of music that seemed kind of old and kind of, and they just had the best time with that. And then the interesting thing was there were symbols found on the cave's walls, small symbols that looked somewhat like letters, but this is prehistoric, And there's a woman she's from Spain, and she is some kind of doctorate in historical this and that, and so she's been to numerous caves, and she came up with, I think it's about 20 symbols that were very, very similar enough to think that they might have been some common understanding of them. And ironically, when you look at them, they look a whole lot like the little symbols we use on our phones.
Wow.
So that was kind of
Aliens.
fun to, for the kids to realize, kind of
full circle.
Yeah. And then we did cooking classes. That helped with my husband, the chef, but I got to where I could do some too. And really thought it was in my first semester of teaching, and I decided that we would make crepes in the classroom with 30 kids. And then part of that day made me think that my teaching career had ended, because again, with middle school kids,
here we go.
You never know. And so we had the crepe batter. You make it the night before, and that makes it easy because it's all done, the day of. And of course, you have to have a hot skillet, and you can't just have one. You got to have at least 2 going, because otherwise you run out of time and all this and that. So everything was going just dandy, and the kids were having a good time. The room smelled delicious. And then the classroom door opens, and in comes a girl who had finished her crepe. She had eaten, she'd done everything right. But this is middle school, she jumped up on top of the first desk in the room and ran across the tops of the other 6 rows and landed on the back shoulders of a boy who had earlier in the day promised her a piggyback ride.
Oh my God.
So in her mind, it was time
to get the piggyback ride.
Well, of course, he didn't see or hear her coming. So his reaction was to, as anybody would, kind of
Did she break
double
his
over.
back?
Now, he doubled over, and in so doing, she toppled over and landed on her head and was on the floor unconscious. So this was about a 30-second or 20-second time frame.
That lasted 4 minutes in your mind.
Well, I thought that's the shortest career ever. I think it was like in October, and I'd started, my first school year. And I mean, if you're an experienced teacher, you might have some experiences to pull from where how you handled it and all. But I was so new in the building, I didn't even know everybody's name, on the faculty. So luckily, I knew the PE teachers, and so I thought, okay, Susan, just get a grip. So I sent 2 to the office, because if you send 1 and it's the one that's so scared they can't talk, that's not good. So I send 2 to the office, keep them both on track, and then 2 to the PE teachers, because they know all the CPR and all that kind of stuff. And I got everybody else out in the hallway lined up to get out of the way. And soon there was an administrator and this and that. They called her parents, and they took her in the school called the ambulance. They let me go with her, because I just thought, I'm going to just be a nervous wreck if I can't be close to her. And so I went to the emergency room with her. She was unconscious the whole way to the emergency room. I didn't know if she had broken her neck or...
Right, you didn't know.
And
I bet she's never going to do that again.
Well, and then I dreaded talking to her parents, because how do you explain that you were doing an activity, that resulted in their child landing on their neck? Those floors, the cement with just a thin layer of carpet, on it.
Okay, so you rode in the ambulance with her, and then what happened?
Well, first of all, I prayed the whole time, all the way to the hospital. And when we got there, her parents were not there yet. And of course, they just take the person, and you're not allowed in, past. So I was in the waiting room when her parents came, and of course I was able to tell them that she seemed to be doing well, and they said, oh, she does stupid stuff all the time.
Oh, so you're like, I may be a teacher after all.
I know. So I took a big sigh of relief with that. I figured, I was ready in my heart and soul to hear whatever from their parents, So anyway, and then I made crepes every year after that, and made sure that I told them a little brief version of the story.
Nobody can walk on the desks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta stay on the ground, and it worked out really well. But it was fun, and if you plan ahead of time, like for example, a lot of these things I would plan during the week of testing, because when they're in their math, science, language arts, and social studies classes, they don't want to come to their other classes and have academic. Their brains kind of weary. So if you're smart, you take that into consideration, and you plan something that they would enjoy engaging in, and takes care of that, that problem. So I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's still, I do sub now and then, but it's not the same thing. It's not your classroom, not your students. And I have not done a good job of going through the boxes from the move of the stuff that, of course you unpack your silverware and your plates and all that, but your memoirs and things. And so occasionally I'll be brave and go up and take a box and go through it, and there's often something in there,
How many boxes do you have after all those years?
More than the legal limit. Well, the other thing is, normally when someone's going to retire, they anticipate that. So all year long, as they teach a unit or a subject, they try to do something with it, maybe give it to a colleague, or if, like I was the only French teacher in the school, but I knew French teachers in other schools, you share things and all that. But I had no intention of retiring, and when in the middle of the summer, I found myself in the emergency room 4 times in 1 week. Had no idea what was that I did not know that I was diabetic, and I did not know that I had high blood pressure. And they're silent, and what was happening was little by little, and just little increments, so little that I didn't perceive any kind of change or shift or feel weird or anything. They just collided, and my blood pressure was like 234, 242 over something, which is extremely high.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that I
have a stroke.
Came through it, semi-intelligent. And so this was the summer of 2020, and COVID was in an uproar. And so my doctor said, well, you're not going back to the classroom until January, because if you were to get COVID on top of this, it would be extremely dangerous. And then I thought, January, that's my kids would have a whole entire half a year with a sub. How can you can't do that. You can't do that. But I didn't want to quit, but I understood there were reasons why I should. And my daughter, who's a teacher, said, "Oh, mother, for the love of God, just give it up." So that attributes to some of the herd of boxes in the attic, is because I had one day to pack up 27 years of stuff, and they wouldn't let Bill come in the building because of COVID. So it was just me, myself, and I doing that, and so I couldn't possibly sort through. I just had to pack and throw it in, and no order, no semblance of order. So when I unpack some of these boxes, they're just random, but they give me comfort that I can still. I love sitting up in the attic and finding something that a student wrote to me, 20 years ago.
Right.
And you'd be surprised how things bubble up, not only in your mind, but a student's. And out of the blue, you'll get this email from somebody you taught, literally 20 years ago. 20 years, that's 2 decades ago, thanking you. And it's never about thanking me for teaching them how to conjugate verbs. It's always something that I said or did to help get them through their middle school years. And I do some substitute teaching locally, and I enjoy being with the kids. I just enjoy being in the school building, but it's not the same for some obvious reasons and some not so obvious reasons. But I'll still go back.
So what are you doing now in your retired years?
My retired years. Well, I'm thinking I'm getting a little bit like my dad, not retired but retread.
I like that. Your recap.
Yeah. He was an amazing person. But I love to write. I love words. My mom was an English teacher. My dad, being a pastor, he said, this is kind of like writing a research paper every week for how many years, for sermons and stuff. And so I joined the Writers Club and the library in Commerce.
Okay.
And they have been meeting every month for over 20 years.
Wow.
With the same people.
The Commerce Library has a lot of wonderful programs.
They do.
And for years and years, their writing prompt was just a letter of the alphabet, but they'd been through the alphabet numerous times.
I guess so.
Yeah. And so now they just say, whatever's on your heart and mind. So some of the things I write that are now, and then some of them are things I've run across and saved, and I'll read it again, fluff it up a little bit, and share it. But it's uncanny how often we will come together as a group, and there'll be some common thread beyond the writing, some theme. But there's several reasons I enjoy doing that. First of all, I just love to write. I don't know why. Nobody ever sat down and said, write, But both my parents had careers that had to do with writing. My dad as a pastor, my mom as an English teacher. And it's just something that I know there's a lot of people that don't enjoy it. Some people even agonize over it and all that. And for me, it's just the most peaceful, calming thing. I just love it. So I've written about a wide variety of things, and that's what they do too. Nobody ever knows who's gonna do what, but we listen to each other and always find comments to make. We never say anything in the form of criticizing something or even critiquing it, which is sort of a positive form of criticism, but. Inevitably, there's always some kind of short conversation where somebody else will make a comment that makes a connection to what they just heard. And my most recent one was about golf, admitting that to me it's just torture, and how anybody could think that was enjoyable, or that they would make it their career. It's just beyond. And when I chose my college, I did not know, I chose it based on its foreign language program. I did not know that they were going to require 2 full years of PE in college, one of which was golf.
Oh.
And so I wrote about that. And it was sort of a cathartic
So was your opinion
thing.
about golf formed after you took that year of golf or before?
It never really made any sense to me how, you watch basketball, you watch football, and everybody's trying to get a higher score.
Mm-hmm.
And their job is to get
a lower
the lowest possible score.
Yep.
I've never understood why, if you're watching a professional or even a college basketball game on TV, it is, first of all, it's loud because, nobody sits quietly in a crowd of basketball, and it's close. There's not much space between the outline of the court and the first set of feet that, from the crowd. And so there they are, the crowd's yelling and screaming, and they're just like, they could practically reach out and touch the player. And in golf, oh my, you're back, you don't make a peep while the guy, hits the ball. And the ball is right there. They don't have to catch the ball or chase the ball. It's just right there.
It's a game of geometry in my mind, and a little bit of strength. Not a lot. You have to learn how to be patient and move your body like you've got a rod up your bottom.
And you don't have to know how to count past 10 at the most, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just weird. So, but that's how far the topics are. So I love the writing. One thing I wasn't expecting I didn't expect to find the writing thing either, but I did. And then this other thing was even, I shouldn't say sweeter to my soul, but equally sweet to my soul, was finding out that I could sing at University of Georgia. And I had been in a choir since I was 3 years old. So both my parents were music majors, and we just sang all the time. My mother was fantastic. She was actually a piano major. And music was just, I thought everybody had, a piano and singing. And so I sang in the symphony chorus in Roswell when we lived down in Cumming for 21 years, Michael O'Neill singers, and it was perfect. It was not that I ever wanted to go to a psychiatrist, but it just made me feel like, teaching is really intense. It just is. There's no discussion about that. It is. And so when I would go to rehearsal on Monday nights for 2.5 hours, I couldn't think about anything else but the music. And not once did a little kid wander into my mind, even when it was crazy stuff like the crep thing. But it was a 2.5 hour break from a very intense thing.
Yeah.
And what was I doing during that 2.5 hours? Learning the amazing music of, Chopin and Bach and Beethoven and all that, from a man who was a protege of Robert Shaw, who was one of the most fabulous choral music directors ever in the United States. He was not only in Shaw's chorus, but he was Shaw's tenor soloist. And so they interfaced a lot. His name was Michael O'Neill, and he still has the Michael O'Neill Singers in Roswell. But that was every Monday night from 7 to 9:30. So coming from Gwinnett County and getting to Roswell, for something in the evening was a bit of a challenge. And then after 9:30, you just wanted to get home. So there was never, it was never a relational thing with the other, people sitting around you, because honestly, people were coming in at, 25 after, and we'd start or at 7, 7 to 9:30. They come in at 5 to 7, which is fine as long as you were in your seat at 7. He didn't tolerate tardiness because there were 150 of us, and you can't have half your group just straggling in, at any one moment. And then at 9:30, it was time to get home. So I didn't have the relational pieces there at all, but I had the music pieces. And so I missed that when I thought when we moved up here that I was going to have to say goodbye bye to that. And our little church choir couldn't be sweeter, but there's just a few of us. So I was missing the other 140 that I'd sung with for 21 years, only to find out that our choir director organist, who's actually on staff at UGA, said, well, you can come sing with the university chorus. And what's that? So there's about 12 or so, mostly women from nearby communities that come together for the rehearsal. And it's very challenging. And then when it's done, it's magnificent. And the end of the semester, they do a performance with every musician in every class together. It's all the instrumentalists, all the vocalists, and there's over about 300 of us, and we do some amazing, classical thing. And so, I mean, all this is within distance of this little town.
Our little lovely town. Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit about you being here in Maysville and what you're doing right now to help our community, because I know you are.
Well, the most recent thing, you could look under my fingernails and see dirt. I love dirt.
Martha Stewart.
There are planters out here by City Hall, and they do need to be pressure washed. Bill's going to do that next year, but they just needed to be. They needed to be what they were meant to be, to hold flowers, not to stub your toe on. And so I heard something about it, and I mentioned to Sandra that I'd be happy to be involved with that. And so I'll tell you the complete truth. She bought some flowers and said, did I still want to plant them? I said yes. And then I got there and I looked at them. They just weren't the right ones. You really have to think through the shade and sunshine thing and all that. And then it's not that the flowers themselves weren't pretty, but since the flower containers were concrete dingy, you had to have something that would have pop.
A little bit of pop.
And the ones that had been purchased were begonias, which are fine, but they were the brown leaf begonias with the cream-colored flowers. And in some situations, that would be lovely, but not in dull ones. So I went to the store where we bought them, and they were glad to trade them in. That's how I got
nice, and they're beautiful. They are beautiful.
Really better than they've ever looked.
Ever
so
beautiful.
That, and then the police. I was watering one morning, and here came the new police chief, and he said, "Oh, these flowers are so nice. I wish I had flowers." And so,
so you're responsible for those. They're beautiful too at the police department.
I went shopping,
Yes.
got the containers, and some flowers there. And then last weekend we were walking through Veterans Park, or walking past it, and there was that young Boy Scout who's working so hard.
Yes.
And his mom and dad and his little sister were there, and they all had paintbrushes, and they were working real hard. And we stopped to thank them and all that. And then Bill looked down and he said, "Look, these are the planters just like, by the City Hall." And they were. They were just as in need of cleaning. But
they needed it.
They needed it. But that'll come, next year. But in the meantime, the Boy Scout said he would appreciate if we did flowers. So red, white, and blue flowers are hard to find. So we did the best we could. So we've got those planted. So that's a daily thing now, either morning or evening, unless it's rain, to go and plant those. So got that going, and then at the library, I am active with that. And
The Maysville Library.
yes, the Maysville Library, which is a wonderful library. It is run by people who care deeply about their responsibilities and their job, and they're very well informed about what they do, and their whole thing is just pointed toward the community. There's nothing about that library that has the spirit of self-service or anything. They are constantly making every effort to reach out to all ages, and all preferences for things. So I brought this with me today. This is what hopefully you'll see in people's front yards.
Oh,
but
nice.
The idea is to take reading seriously. I should say that I've already told you that my college degree was in French, and I taught French. But my master's degree is in literacy, reading, writing, and language. And that was a true eye-opener. I went on with the master's degree in literacy just because I love the written word, and I thought I could maybe spread out a little bit with it. But I learned so many things, and of course you learn, techniques about instructional things. But what really, really touched my heart was when I found out that the states, the United States, the 50 states, project their future prison space needs based on second grade reading scores.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they look at whatever second grader, whatever's happened this year, they'll look at those scores, and then they will, based on that, they will know how many prison cells they need on down the road. Because if you don't learn to read, then you don't read to learn. And if you are not, basically what happens is that child will struggle a little bit more every year. Once they get into the usually middle school where they don't have the same teacher all day long, then, or most of the day long anyway, then, the teacher can't pick up on as many things as they can when they have the same kids every day, all day. And so it's the sad but true story that students' efforts and all might be genuine, but the results are not going to be fruitful. And so year by year, they'll start to struggle more and more and more. And of course, no one likes to struggle, so you get this sort of kind of thing built up in your emotions, and you can't wait to quit. And some of them will either flunk out or they'll stop going, when they legally can, and then struggle with having an income and this and that, and then that can evolve into crime, and unfortunately does into crime. So this is hugely important, and I would encourage families. It's not just about before kindergarten, at the library, starting before kindergarten that you've read 1,000 books. I know that sounds ridiculous, but think how many times parents can read little kiddo books to their children. And at the same time, they should set a goal for adults to read in any one year. Because if you think about it, once you leave school, unless you're an avid reader, you're at the mercy of television or maybe radio or, in other words, some other kind of form.
Tablet.
Yeah.
I recently went to a baby shower, and it was a large shower. There were about close to 50 guests there. It was a big shower. And it was super fun. But on the invitation, they said, please, instead of including a card, because if you've bought a Hallmark card recently, they're
$6, $7, $8.
Yeah. Said buy a children's book instead. And it doesn't even have to be new if you have some that your kids have outgrown. And so that little baby to be has now, he's not even born yet, and he has about 50 books.
Is this
Nice.
Alex's
Yes,
son?
on his little library.
Nice.
And so he's off to a good start. But wouldn't it be great if everybody,
Did that. Yes, it
did
would.
that sense of reading? Again, you learn to read so you can read to learn. So the better you can read. But this is another example, in one of our little town of people who are working really hard. Like I said before, the library is so dedicated. The folks, the staff there, so dedicated to it. So I guess to summarize, I'm quite happy in our new little nest, and look forward to finding other ways that I can put my time and energy into something that maybe I haven't even thought about yet.
Yay.
But I love learning, and I'm very grateful to my parents, who were both people. They were wonderful communicators and good listeners, and they set a really good example for me of how to reach out to others, and a big part of doing that is remembering to be a listener.
Right.
Which I probably didn't model right now because I've been talking for these many minutes. But you did ask me to come and talk.
Yes.
So I held that up.
We really appreciate you being here today
You're
and letting us know about all the stuff going on in the library. And y'all go see Susan at the library.
Yes, the library is, we did even things like bingo last week. and I was the bingo caller, and I did it for like 4 or 5 rounds, and then I switched to French numbers. I studied
Nice.
in English
Yes.
and French, and then I did English and Spanish and English and German, because
Everybody's
Shake
like,
it up a little.
why not? Yeah.
Everybody's probably like,
Well, it's important for people to realize, you don't even have to put it's not just the words that are different, but the word order. So just proof that it's okay to be different.
right,
You just have to be different in a gracious way.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And so we have the reading program going on.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have- What? Real quick, what do we have going on here?
This is just keeping track of the number of books that you have read, and there's a raffle ticket that you can participate in. And always remember that the library system has passports to everything from museums to the zoo. They really can help you work something into your budget. If that's an issue, or just a good reminder. And be a volunteer. If you're looking for something to do during the week and you would like to be a volunteer, they're always welcoming that. And especially if you have some experience with little folks, doing a program with them. And it's a wonderful place to be.
Oh, we really, really appreciate your time. We
You
do.
are welcome.
All right, y'all. So we were really happy to have you today. Thank you for listening to yet another episode of Blind Squirrel Talk, because I'm Lulu.
I'm Kim.
And we're thanking Susan. And we will
Thank you,
see y'all
Susan.
next time. Bye, everybody.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. I like that.
Adios.